So now I would like to introduce Jayne Finn and Mike Evans. Mike learned to sail in Vancouver, British Columbia, and from there he graduated to racing and cruising on the Pacific coast. After relocating to Toronto, he and Jayne met. In 1998, they decided to become boat owners and so purchased a CNC Mark V. They raced their CNC on Lake Ontario and loved life on the water so much, they moved up to Fantasia 2, a 1978 Niagara 35. In 2019, they purchased a Loons, and I don't have the name of the kind of boat here. Anyway, it's called Loons Lace. On Fanti, since 2000, they have cruised extensively on Lakes Ontario, Erie, Huron, and Georgian Bay. They have also completed a multi-season down east circle to Quebec, Atlantic Canada, and New England. Since then, they have sailed from Toronto to Lewisporte, Newfoundland, circumnavigated Newfoundland, and sailed the south shore of Labrador. In July 21, Jayne and Mike completed an Atlantic crossing, sailing from Fogo Island, Newfoundland, to Horta, Fail Island, Azores. Their boat, Loons Lace, is overwintering in Turcia, near Turcia Island, till they return in late March. Last time we saw the YouTube videos of this last adventure, and today they join us on Zoom, and it's the fourth time we have them, and we will have enjoyed their voyages sailing over many, many places. Please give Jayne and Mike a warm shellback wave.
Hi.
And Richard, you're muted now. Thank you. Mike and Jayne, it's over to you.
Okay, I'll share my screen and we'll get started.
And I just need to say that I have an appointment and we'll have to dash off before we finish here. But I think Judith, her screen is still showing. I can't see my screen here, but.
Can everybody see the presentation?
Yes, we can now.
Okay. Jayne, you're having technical difficulties, or you're okay to start now?
Sure.
Okay.
I just can't see myself.
Okay. Oh, you can't see yourself. I think
No,
that's
it's okay.
probably a setting in. Okay, that was well, thank you, Diane, for the intro. And I guess you're from Mimico Cruising Club, is that right?
That's right.
Oh, good. Yeah, we used to sail out of Etobicoke one time.
Thanks, Richard.
Years and years ago. As Diane said, there's the crew, are Jayne and I, and yeah, we started sailing in Etobicoke about 20 odd years ago, and we're now on our third boat that we've just purchased in 2018. We had a Niagara 35. We sailed for 17 years, and we now have this. It's a Naiad, a Naiad 40 from Sweden. So a little bit bigger, a little bit faster, and yep, holds a whole lot of gear. So it's great. We didn't sail at all in 2020 because of the lockdown. We couldn't get to our boat in Newfoundland. But this past season, we did get down quite good and early. We drove out to Newfoundland in May, and we took our boat across to the Azores. And as Diane said, that's where it is now. So we have sailed pretty much, we've circumnavigated Newfoundland. We've done it over several seasons, which is kind of how we tend to do things. We take our boat somewhere and we'll sail it for a season, and then we just leave it. We find another club, we join a club or a marina, and we leave the boat there. So over several seasons, we've circumnavigated the island. In 2019, we sailed from our home in Cobourg all the way down the St. Lawrence, the Yellow Line, to Gaspe, and then from Gaspe across to Port aux Basques and the south coast here between Port aux Basques and Cape Race on the southeast corner of Newfoundland. So that was our big trip that year. We're not going to cover the first part down the river from Gaspe to Coburg. We don't quite have time. There are slides on our website if anyone's interested in that part of the trip. And over the years, we've grown to rely greatly on Cheryl Barr's Down East Circle route. If anyone's considering doing this route, or you just want to read about it, it's an excellent guide, and she covers the whole way down the St. Lawrence, through the Maritime provinces and all the way back up to the Hudson River. So that was our one trip we did in over, I think, 3 or 4 seasons. In 2006, I think we started doing that one. Of course, we carry we have some paper charts still. We have navionics, all the usual stuff. If you're planning to cruise Newfoundland, though, this guide by the Cruising Club of America we find is excellent. It's written by sailors for sailors, and there's lots of sketch charts, and it just shows you in and out of every little place in Newfoundland. It's really good. We also use the hydrographic survey sailing directions, but they're not quite as easy to read. So we'll start here from Gaspe and just go over a little bit. It's a great harbor, as you can see on the chartlet on the upper right here. It's very deep. It's almost, I think it's about 15 miles from Cap Gaspe into the harbor, well protected, and there's great sailing just in the bay. And sailing downriver from Lake Ontario, we find it's about 3 days if you're planning to go down to Montreal, and about 5 days to Quebec City, and then from there there's just great cruising because the river widens up and you can zigzag back and forth, and there's tons of fishing harbors. In 2019 we were 23 days out to Gaspe, so we don't really hurry when we're doing sailing or doing trips like this. Oh, and that's no overnight sails, just day sailing. This is the new dock, or visitors dock at Gaspe, at Marina Gaspe. Very comfortable. They've just updated their facility there. They have a restaurant. They have fuel. They have water. There's excellent provisioning there. There's you can see the town in behind. You can just walk to the town from the marina, which is very handy. And there's also a shopping center up on the hill. So anything you need to get for your boat is really close by. And there's great services there, restaurants. We have a favorite place we go where they serve excellent seafood. Auberge William Wakeham. And actually, I think it was just sold this last year. It was up for sale. So I hope somebody's keeping it open. So sailing from Gaspe to Port Aux Basques, it's about 250 miles straight across. And it's pretty much once you get out there, you have to complete the trip. There's you can turn around, or you could duck into Ile de Madeleine here on just below the course line. And there's some excellent harbors there. Havre-Robert or Port aux Basques Capamel is really an excellent harbor. We've been in there years ago. So it pretty much, because it is kind of an open water passage, you have to do a little planning. There can be weather issues. It can be quite rough out there. And we use Predict Wind. It's easy to download crib files. We have an Iridium satellite modem, but generally we just use it on the internet. So we're just looking for a fair weather passage. We don't want to ever be out there if it's rough. Winds less than 20 knots, and hopefully beside us or on the cord or something like that. We're pretty, we very carefully refit the boat before we did this trip because it was new to us. So we had it in the shop and we went over everything we could think of, to prepare for the trip. And, with vessel safety, we have current electronics, jack lines, life jackets, EPIRB, lee cloths for overnighting, all that kind of stuff. And there will be, it is an overnight crossing. It's about 40 hours. So somebody always has to be on watch, of course. It is a major shipping channel going into Cabot Strait. And provisioning, of course, Jayne always handles that. And she usually pre-cooks some hot meals so that it's, we put things in thermoses just to make it easy. And we keep a lot of stuff in our cockpit locker, lots of snacks, thermoses with hot drinks, cold drinks, everything just to make it easier to get going. You can see
So you want me to say a few things here before I have to go?
Oh, please do. I didn't know you were still there.
Yeah, so at any rate, these are just some pictures of our preparation. So the bottom left there is the salon with a lee cloth. And so that's our main kind of sea berth. We did a kind of a test passage, ocean passage on a friend's boat from the Chesapeake to Nassau in December 2019 in preparation for our ocean crossing that we were planning. There were no lee cloths on the boat. And you can see Mike in the lower right here was thrown off his berth and ended up with quite a black eye. Mike, I can see your settings here. And you can see here in the center picture, lower center, that's our cockpit. The Naiad has a hard screen and these nice, they call it a like a watch station. So I keep this insulated bag handy all the time. So regardless, if you're up at night, there's snacks available. You don't have to go down below because sometimes there are fishing boats, floats, cargo ships, lots of activity in the Cabot Strait. So at any rate, I'm going to beg off here now and say thanks for the opportunity to speak with you, and I'll hand it over to Mike.
Thanks, Jayne. Okay, well, I'll just struggle through this without Jayne's help. There's a lot of slides that she likes to cover, but I'll try not to forget my points. But yep. Oh, and on the upper left, that's our mascot, Twilligan. We tied him to the mast, so he was safe and secure there. And there's quite a bit of weather information in the Maritimes and on the Grand Banks and around Newfoundland. It's a little bit more complicated than Lake Ontario because the weather, there's a lot more weather regions, and the forecast, when they read it on VHF, can go on for an hour. So it's important to listen to that or download it from. We usually do it on the internet because it is so long. And another thing we like to look at is notice the fish harvesters on Fisheries and Oceans Canada, their website, and it'll show you which fisheries are active. And we were departing June 30th. We were departing after June 30th, so that meant there would be no lobster fishing. So because the Magdalene Islands, there's a ton of lobster fishing there. So if you go before that, you could run into a lot of lobster boats and, of course, traps. But this after then, it's much better to go, so there won't be any buoys in the water. So the purple shaded area is the commercial traffic separation zone. And you can see coming into Cabot Strait, this is allowing all the traffic from Europe to come up to Montreal and the Great Lakes ports. They also come up around the top of Newfoundland through the Strait of Belle Isle. But it can be quite busy here with freighter traffic. And also the ferries crossing from North Sydney to Port aux Basques go, twice a day. So you do have to watch for them. So take into account, fishing boats, the freighters, tankers, and ferry boats. Yeah, I like to set a waypoint on each side of the traffic separation zone. So just so we can see when we're entering and when we're leaving. As I said, it's about a 40-hour crossing. So we thought that the tides, because the tides are quite significant, of course, going out to the Atlantic coast. We thought the tides would even out if we just left real early. So we left at 0600 from Gaspe on an ebb tide. So we're gaining a knot of speed. But we arrived in Port aux Basques at about 8 p.m. or 2000 hours, and which was against a full flood because it was much slower crossing than we had anticipated. So we were lucky to get in before it got dark, or we only got in as it was getting dark. So in hindsight, we would have probably left a couple of hours earlier at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. But we weren't familiar with how strong the tide is at Port aux Basques and Cape Ray. And we had one major problem. We got out to about 15 miles out to Cap Gaspe, and at that we have a furling main on the new boat. The Naiad has a Selden furling mast. One of the, it has 7-foot long vertical battens, carbon fiber in the leech. And one of them came through the pocket and stuck inside the mast, which caused the main to completely jam up about halfway up and down. And I had to climb the mast and wrap a rope around it. And then we sailed all the way back in, 15 miles back, and tied up at the harbor. And then we had to work it out of the mast, get the batten out. We didn't bother to fix the pocket. We just left the batten out. And we have since had the main recut because it was a very full roach main with a large rounded leech. So we've had it cut to a hollow leech, and we've taken the battens down to half that size. And actually, we've just taken the battens right out because we hate them. They do tend to go in. If they go into the mast perfectly parallel, it's fine. But if they come in at an angle, they do tend, or in or out, they can get jammed. So to heck with battens, we don't need them. We got a little leech flapping, but you can live with that when you're cruising. Anyway, we waited a couple of days for another weather window because we were looking for favorable southeast, southwest winds, something like that. We left in the fog, unfortunately, and the winds were very light, so it wasn't quite as nice. We had a great overnight sail across the Gulf of Madeline, though. It was beautiful. But as we got further east, nearing Cabot Strait, there was huge thunderstorms and squalls, which reduced our speed considerably. And at that point, we were being set back by the tide, and the outflowing current and the incoming tide creates huge square waves off of Cape Ray into Cabot Strait, and it was extremely slow going. I think you can see from this slide that, yeah, we're motoring at, yeah, we're just making, this is the speed on the left here, and speed over ground is 3.5. We would normally motor at 7 knots, so we're losing almost 4 knots, and that seemed to go on forever. We could see Port aux Basques in the distance, and that's a shot. That's Cape Ray. The ferry comes in over here to the right. That's the big light, Port aux Basques headland, and we got in. It was dark. Fortunately, the wind had dropped and it was calm, and there was lots of room at the government wharf. So we were happy to get in there, and it is a tricky entrance, and the ferries go in and out. But the harbor, the harbor master is very good, and they talked to us all the way in, and were telling us what was going on and giving us advice about where to go and stuff. So just like everyone in Newfoundland, they're all so nice. Everybody is so helpful. And as we got there,
this is the place where the fishermen gather with oilskins and boots and cape and fathom down. All sizes of figures with spin lines and figures in ground. Some are working their chiggers while others are yarning.
as we got there, everyone, all the local people were out squid jigging because it just happened to be the August 12th, and squid were running. So that was kind of fun. We've never seen actually people squid jigging before. Although we know that song from the squid jigging song from years ago. So in hindsight, our crossing plan was well. The boat worked very nicely, except for the furling main problem, which we think we solved now by having the main recut. The route plan was pretty good, except the wind was turned against us and slowed us down, which then we hit the tide, and our autopilot packed it in all together. So we were hand steering most of the way. Actually, the whole trip from Gaspe right up to Lewisporte, we were pretty much having to babysit our autopilot. It kept disengaging. It would work for a while, and then it would just let go of the wheel. So we've since got a new one. Anyway, the reason we came was to explore all these fantastic anchorages, and that's what we love to do, is as much as possible is tie up to fishing harbor wharfs, or just find a bay and throw the anchor out. And Newfoundland is just great for that. There are thousands of miles of anchorages. Jayne loves to paint, so it's also a great opportunity for her to get out and work out in the open, in the air, and paint. And I photograph and do videos. So Port Aux Basques is about 4,000 people. Oh, and Wreckhouse Bay, if you've ever been there, nearby, is considered the windiest place in Canada. When we were coming back from Newfoundland, an 18-wheeler in front of us was blown off the road at Wreckhouse. So
Wow.
you do have to be very careful. When they say don't drive, they mean don't drive. This is a receipt from staying at the wharf, and they charge us $10 a night, which is typical for fishing harbor wharfs everywhere in Newfoundland. It's just a very minimal fee that they will charge, if they charge you anything at all. Often they just don't care because you're a sailboat and you're from Ontario. They think that's pretty neat. But it's a great harbor. There was lots of stuff going on. There's music in the park across the way. There was dancing, and it's really a fun spot. And even if you don't sail, I'd recommend anybody to go to Newfoundland. If you have a car or take a bus or whatever you can, it's just a great trip. The ferries come in across from the fishing harbor, and it's kind of fun to watch them backing in.
Backing in.
Yeah, we never back our boat in, and they back their ferry, and I don't know how that works, but they've got a lot more confidence than us. And these are the harbors we're going to, that we did visit along the south coast in the time that we had. Because I guess, it's now mid-August. And we're going to visit Île aux Morts, or I'm saying that wrong. They call it Isle aux Morts, is the way Newfoundlanders pronounce it. And it's just right next to Port aux Basques, just around the corner. And there is a road that goes all the way out to Blanche. And after that, the road stops, and then all the next harbors are considered outports. Outports are not serviced by roads, only by ferry. We have friends who live there that we know from Lewisporte, and but the weather was, oh, sorry, there's somebody at my door.
we have the vagaries of working from home here, where somebody can knock on the door or we can have an alarm show up from the Ontario government.
Yep.
Welcome back, Mike.
Thanks. Yeah.
The vagaries of working from home.
But one thing in 2019, the weather was fantastic. People kept saying, you know, it's not always like this, but we had sun, I think, for 3 weeks. There was virtually no rain, no fog, a couple of days only. So this is another fishing harbor, a fishing government wharf. We just tie up. So because the fishing season was not active, there was lots of room. Sometimes if it was busy, if there was lots of, you just have to ask and tie up to a fishing boat. But we met this interesting couple who on Ave de Mar, and they had sailed from Vancouver to A Morts via Cape Horn. So we thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah.
They had been to Cape Horn, Cape of Good Hope, South Georgian Island, all the places you only ever hear of. And the 35-foot boat they built themselves. But there's great walking. They have Newfoundland has done a lot with creating trails for visitors, people who just are maybe not sailing, but if you're camping or just visiting, there's lots of walking trails. This is a historic one that they created for the Harvey family, who were a famous family who lived there, and they rescued hundreds of people off of freighters that ran aground in front of A Morts. And the Coast Guard vessel Anne Harvey is named after their daughter. Those are our friends that we know from Lewisporte Yacht Club, and they live there. Joanne and Roger, yes. And from there, we're going to sail on to Rose Blanche. And one thing we've been noticing on the South Coast is that there's a lot of, well, not just the South Coast, but everywhere we've been, there's a lot of species that you might consider tropical, like these sunfish and leatherback turtles that we see quite a few. And in 2016, I saw a great white shark in Conception Bay. Yeah, it came up right behind the boat. Wow, amazing. Rose Blanche is the end of the road. There is a road in there, and a lot of these settlements were named by the French. That's why of the name Rose Blanche. And then another fishing wharf there, the yellow painted wharfs are always government. And again, there was no active fishing, so there was lots of room for us. Oh, that was just a note to say that if there is fishing boats there, you should ask before you tie up to one, because we tied up to one once, but he was going out at 5 a.m. So we had to get up at 5 a.m. to untie from him. And we met friendly locals. These young ladies showed us around town. They wanted to take us to see all the sights. And the historic lighthouse sits out on the end. It's on the point. It was designed by the Scots, Stevenson in Scotland, and it's been all restored. It's a beautiful house. So yeah, population peaked in the 70s, but since the cod moratorium in 92, the town has I think 400 permanent residents, which is pretty big that's probably the largest town on the South Coast, one of them anyway. So just an overview, and we are now here in the lower left, and we're going to just do this piece where there is a road going into Burgeo. You turn off at Stephenville and you can drive into Burgeo. So again, outports are not connected by road, true outports. We did an overnight stop at a little Garia, and then we were on to Grand Bruit, as it's called, and That's Jayne holding up the Cruising Club of America Guide to Newfoundland, which, yeah, that's our kind of our go-to guide when we're out there. And it's just beautiful. And the town is was closed in 2010, and the government made a deal and purchased all the properties. Some people, bought them back. So there are a few people around, but basically the town is empty, and it's just as it was left in 2010. That is their government wharf where we're tied up. And Grand Bruit is, it's named by this waterfall that runs right down the middle of it. The charting is quite good. That we have, we've been all the way around the island. We found that, there's some anomalies with the charting, particularly when you zoom in on Navionics, you'll find that they give you this pretty colored picture of the, contemporary shading on Navionics for, chart plotter or iPad. But when you zoom in, you'll find that there's just this, it's all based on these old soundings that were done in the 1800s. But they're surprisingly accurate. We had no problems. And Cinq Cerf Bay is just an amazing place. There's a sand beach, excellent anchorage, no one there at all. And the water was warm enough to swim. We saw caribou. These are woodland caribou. They don't live in a herd. They live, solitarily in the forest. So this one came down and curled up on the beach. Beautiful, calm days and nights there. Moon and stars, a full moon and stars one night. I think we spent 3 nights there at anchor. And the next day was not so nice. We sailed on to Burgeo, and this is much more of a what it should be like in the summer there. Will get days of fog and lots of rain. We wanted to go into the Marine Service Center, which is in the ticklish entrance. You can see, well, maybe it's hard to see from this little chartlet, but the tickle is way down between these rocks. And that's actually where the town is. You enter from the top, you enter between these 2 rocks, and then down, there's a public wharf here. But the weather wasn't, by the time we got there, it was blowing and raining. And so we just anchored out. We have a lot of chains, so we could anchor in 50 feet at 5 to 1. Yeah, now you can see better on this chartlet. So that's the entrance here. So it's just 3.6 meters deep and very narrow here. But the weather was fantastic, and there is a Marine Service Center there. They have a travel lift. Unfortunately, it's not working, but they're trying to get it fixed. And it's a very lively place, and the food fishery was active in the summer months. Everyone in Newfoundland's allowed to fish. I think it's 5 fish per day per person when the season's open. It's usually open for 2 and 3 weeks at a time. Newfoundlanders, they can fish or freeze it and use it all, of course, all winter. There were other boats there. These young couple on this big catamaran from Halifax, and a couple of American boats too. It was surprisingly busy there for yachts. I think 4 boats. One thing that we've encountered is that not all water on the government wharfs is drinking water, is not potable. Sometimes it's just for washing, or the fishing boats use it for various things. So you should check with someone before you do drink wharf water. I drank some once and got quite sick. In this case, their water is good. It's treated town water. In a lot of towns, there is a water treatment plant where you go to fill your water jug. And it has like a UV filtration process. Typical Newfoundland view, somebody getting firewood in, and there's a fantastic park there called Sandbanks Park, and it's about 20 miles long, a huge big sandbar. So just a wonderful place to spend a day. And Jayne likes to talk about this slide, but she loves to cook. And with the Naiad has a really good galley. It has lots of storage and unfortunately kind of a small stove, but she was made cod au gratin. So it's a different recipe. You use spaghetti instead of potatoes, I think, or something. It's really good. So the following day, we moved on to Grey River, which is there's a town of Jert's Cove, which is right at the head of, or right at the entrance to the inlet. And it is an outport, a true outport. And this is Jert's Cove, and this is the coastal freighter that comes in and out. And I think you can see there's a whole bunch of people, maybe not there, but there's a whole bunch of people standing there waiting to get on, and they're going to Ramia, they're going to Burgeo, they'll jump in their car, drive, go up to Stephenville or around to Port Aux Basques or something. So it's interesting to see that this is on this piece of the South Coast is still functioning. The outports, there is still service for some of these small communities. And I think Jert's Cove maybe, I don't know, it might only be 100 people there or something. Yeah, these are the remaining outports on the South Coast that are serviced by the coastal steamer. But it's a fantastic anchorage. We just couldn't believe how beautiful it was up there. And the bay was, it's amazing. It's only, it's 10 to 12 meters deep for thousands of feet. And it's just filled with mud as far as we could see. You could anchor in the middle, you could anchor on one. It didn't make any difference. It was just an incredibly good anchorage. Now you can see the cod au gratin, and Jayne makes it with cod, cheese, and then spaghetti, and it's baked. It's fantastic. Can't say enough about. And the next day we went to Francois or Francois, it looks like on the chart. And it's just a short hop, but just a day sail along the coast. And it is a really interesting harbor because the inlet is very short and very steep sided. It is an outport also serviced by the coastal freighter. And we were meeting our friends, Kit and Adrian, and they're from Philadelphia, and they've been up sailing in Newfoundland for the last 10 years. We've met them all over the place in various harbors. So we had arranged to rendezvous with them. And I think, one of the most interesting things about Francois is that there's a floating dock, which I think is one of the only floating docks we've seen in any of the outports, certainly, and in many of the fishing harbors. So it's very easy to tie to. You don't have to kind of, let out a lot of scope or climb up and down a very steep wooden face. Really like kind of like your yacht club, So those are the boats way down there at tied to the wharf, and there's great hiking. I think this is called Monk's Head here in the back, and then there's Charlie's Head. There's just some really beautiful walking when the weather's and the weather was just fine. There was blueberries growing up in the hills. Very, very nice. And I think the town there's only 80 people living in Francois permanently. Jayne went, we hiked to the top. Jayne made a beautiful painting. And the following day, the weather was really not nice. This is kind of big. A front came through and blew 30, 40 knots. But our friends from Kit and Adrian had just come back from St Pierre, and everybody who comes back from St Pierre has at least one bottle of wine, and they had a couple that they shared with us. So we just hung out in our boats and spent a pretty bumpy night there, tied to that wharf. And it was so windy, it seemed to push all the water up to the coast, and there was big kind of swells going the next day. We sailed on kind of a typical view of the coast, very barren there. Looks like south, actually looks like even mid-Labrador. And this is Hare Bay, which is a really deep, deep fjord. This, too bad we didn't have more time to explore it. There's lots to see there. There are several waterfalls, but we had to kind of get moving at this point. It was getting kind of late in August. And we knew that there was a weather issue coming. And so we really sort of felt that we didn't have time to explore Hare Bay. Next time we get there, we'll have to spend more time. We're going to go on to St Pierre, the French islands, which are only 40 miles offshore, or sorry, 60 miles offshore. Miquelon's 40 miles, St Pierre 60. And yeah, once you leave Hare Bay, you cross the international boundary and you enter France, just 20 miles offshore from Hare Bay. The only time we saw dolphins all summer, French dolphins, I guess. And here we had another one of these, just beautiful sails, and our boat really loves this, like all boats, loves this flat water condition with a close reach. And we got over 60 miles in really good time. We were in before it was dark. It is a tricky entrance in some ways. Well, any harbor, I find any harbor you haven't been into is a tricky entrance. It doesn't matter where it is, but this one is quite busy. There's a couple of ferries, there's commercial traffic, there's fishing boats, there's a lot of buoys and marks. Because I studied this chart for hours and I was dreading going in there. It's not that bad once you've been in, but way in the back of the harbor, there's a little sailboat symbol, and that is the Yacht Club of St Pierre. So kind of a torturous route through there. We came in through this major channel. You can come in through here also, but we'd never tried that yet. But the Yacht Club de St Pierre actually has a really nice wharf, and there's enough room for, yeah, good half a dozen boats, maybe more than that. Of course, we've crossed into France, and as soon as we were there, and we tied the boat up, and the customs were there. The French customs were there, and they said, "Okay, we're coming aboard," and they wanted to see our passports and, of course, our ship's papers, the registration, etc. So, and they had lots of, just the basic questions: what are you carrying and stuff like that. But they were very nice, very efficient. We were checked in, I think, within a half an hour of getting there. We didn't have to go to any offices or anything like you have to do in many places. The first thing to do is go to a bank machine, get some euros. And that's the new ferry that goes to Fortune on the Avalon Peninsula. They've got two of these beautiful ferries. So yeah, you can, if you're camping, driving out that way, you can just hop over on the ferry. You really don't need a car on the island. It's not that big. And the first place we went was to the patisserie, because we'd heard there was fantastic, and it's amazing. It's French baking right there in the Atlantic, and it's very French. It's surprisingly how French St Pierre is. It really is amazing. There's direct flights from St Pierre to Paris. They have an international airport. Yes, so we went to the charcuterie, épicerie, fromagerie, etc. So yeah, it was just a fun stop, and the food was terrific. There's a really good museum across from the marina, and a lot of it covers the fishing industry. There at one time, I think there were 20 canneries on St Pierre. There are none. I believe they're all closed now. As most of them are in the south. I don't think there is one on the south coast of Newfoundland. There is no longer a processing plant left. since the cod moratorium, or the collapse of the fishery. And these interesting leather boots are actually old fishermen's boots from the, I guess, back in the 20s or something. Across from, this is, you can see the town in the background, the commercial harbor. It's just a big rock, really. There's not much growing there. And I think there's more on Miquelon. We didn't get there, but they've restored a fishing village on Ile Morin across from St Pierre, and it's very interesting. They used to split and dry cod on the rocks there, on piles of round stones, because there was no wood. They couldn't make the wooden flakes like they do in Newfoundland. This beautiful yacht arrived from, I think, Massachusetts or something. Yeah, it was an incredible group of young men on there. And then, of course, leaving St Pierre. Oh, I'm sorry, somebody else at the door.
Friendly place, Port Colbert.
Sorry.
You live in a friendly place, Mike.
No, it's actually just somebody dropping something off. Yeah, so once you leave St Pierre, of course, you have to cross the border again back into Canada. So you have to notify Customs, Border Services, and you have to go to an official reporting in station, which is only in that area is either Fortune or St. Lawrence Harbor. So we went into St. Lawrence, which is here on the Burin Peninsula on this side, the east side of the Burin. And from there, we're going to cross Placentia Bay from Burin to Avalon Peninsula and go into St. Brides, which is right here, almost on the tip of the Avalon Peninsula, where Cape St. Mary's is. And it's again, a fishing harbor. It was a little bit shallow for us. We tied up and we were actually bouncing on the bottom because we draw 7 feet, but we're okay. Very nice people there. Somebody brought us some loaves of bread, and yeah, it was really, really nice. And what we wanted to see was Cape St. Mary's, where there's a huge bird colony. My wife, Jayne, is very interested in birds, and it's about 20 miles out of town. And so one of the fishermen said, "Here, take my truck," and a big diesel truck, and off we went in his truck to see the bird colony. This late in the season, there was mostly only gannets there. Earlier in the season, I think there's 4 or 5 species nesting, but you can still, I think, see a bit in this video that there's some gannet chicks. They're kind of gray and fuzzy looking, but this is an amazing colony of Atlantic gannets there. Similar to the ones on Persay, I think. Yeah, there's a big colony like this on Persay as well, off of Gaspe. But as I said, there was a weather issue following us, or coming up the coast behind us, was Hurricane Dorian, which was really doing some weird things. It had whacked into Florida, gone out to sea, and everyone thought it was over. A done deal, but then it regenerated itself and came in, and of course hit Nova Scotia, and which was just right across from the south coast. So we felt that the best thing that we could do was get up off the south coast, because St. Brides Harbour had been severely damaged. I think it's Hurricane Gerd in 1999. And there was fishing boats thrown out of the harbor up into the parking lot at that time, because it's kind of open to the south it's just the waves being generated in front of the hurricane. Seas to 20 meters. So we felt that we'll just go through these last harbors up to Lewisporte. As I said, there was height of summer, and now it's into September, so lots of blueberries. So in one very long day, we had wanted to explore some of St. Mary's Bay, Trepassey, do a few more stops here. We went all the way from St. Brides up to Fermuse Harbour, which is a big fishing harbor right on the east coast. Because it still wasn't clear if the storm would come, up on the east side, west side, go pass over the island, etc. So we sent kind of motor sail 100 miles in one day up to St. John's, and we prepared to ride out the storm in St. John's Harbour. That's where these pictures are. And we have just kind of basic, we have good large fenders for, Lake Ontario sailing or most of Newfoundland. But somebody came down and said, oh, if it's a hurricane coming through, you need much bigger fenders. So they loaned us 4 of these giant, I think they were 36-inch diameter balls off a fishing boat to put down the side of our boat. And we were all ready to ride out Dorian in St. John's Harbour. And then the captain of the pilot boat came down and said he didn't think it was a good idea because the surge, it gets trapped in the harbor. It's all concrete all the way around. So if waves are forced in, they tend to travel right around the harbor, and down where we were at the head, the waves, of course, hit the end and then they wash back. And he said it can get extremely uncomfortable there. So he thought we should move on. In hindsight, Fermuse would have been the best harbor, but we went up to Royal Newfoundland, and we tied up there. They have an excellent wharf, but this break wall is just a stone riprap, and it was actually taken out in a winter storm a couple of years back. So we were very lucky the storm didn't come in that way. But this is what the storm was doing. You can see it was down in the Bahamas, came up the Florida coast, went out in the ocean, and then turned back into Nova Scotia. And I think our friends on Splice, they were in Burgeo and they saw winds 70 knots. We only saw 40 knots at Conception Bay. So we were pretty, and interesting to note, one of the weather boys off Cape Ray recorded a 100-foot wave on the west coast. So that's where the storm actually traveled up Belle Isle. Our friends from Lewisporte came down, or we know from Conception Bay South, came down to see us and took us out for dinner and stuff. And then we just have a few more stops. So we're officially off the south coast and now on the east coast. This is Bay de Verde, a big shrimp fishing or shrimp processing plant is there. And all the boats there are fairly large shrimpers. There was some cod boats there too. And after the storm went through, the weather was becoming much more fall-like, and then we were seeing a lot more wind and waves. So this is Bonavista in September. And you can see the interesting, there is this is Bonavista Light here, and there's an offlying rock, and I believe it is marked by a buoy, and it's the least depth of 10 to 12 meters, and there was waves were breaking on it after there was a big storm, so waves were at least 10 meters. And in Bonavista, there's a substantial fishing fleet. And they have a floating wharf too, or a floating dock. It's very easy to tie up to. Jayne went to the fish plant and they gave her this huge piece of fresh bluefin tuna. So first time we've ever seen that on the south. Well, in Newfoundland, somebody gave us some actually down in Massachusetts once, but they're very rare fish. And I believe the fish that they had 4 fish that they caught on rod. They were all going directly to Japan. There was a buyer there at Bonavista, and the fish were going. They'd just been caught. They were being cut up and shipped directly to. They'd be in Tokyo the following day. So just a couple of more stops. This is Bonavista here on the right, and then we're going to go up and around Cape Friels and down into Notre Dame Bay and exploits. And the boat is going to Lewisporte, which is the largest kind of yachting and marine center on the east coast of Newfoundland. They have excellent facilities. They have a travel lift. We've been going there for years. And we wound up at one of their floating docks, and just that was our trip. We'd been gone for a couple of months, I guess, since we left Lake Ontario, and it was now getting late into the fall season, and then the winds really begin to pick up. Gets pretty cold and rainy, and pretty much everybody's hauled out by October. So this would have been early October, mid-October, I think. And it's a full service marina. They have jack stands. So if you take your boat, you can, you can arrange with them to haul out, and they will, look after for you, put stands up, and there's part of it's paved. So there's good hard ground, because it does get quite windy there. We did leave our mast up, although there's some pretty severe windstorms there. We have a little, we don't cover the boat. We have just a cockpit cover that we use to cover our center cockpit with, just to keep, dirt and snow out of the cockpit. And while we were hanging around there, somebody we didn't even know, it was Thanksgiving, they came up and invited us for dinner. So typical Newfoundlanders. And yep, that's my last slide. There's some contact info here. If anyone would like the slides, they're on our website. I sent a link in a message earlier, and feel free to contact us, Mike or Jayne, at finnevans.ca. And yeah, we'd love to talk about the trip if you have questions or whatever. So yeah, that's my last zone.
We were in Newfoundland the end of 2019 or 2000, yeah, and we had a couple of weeks there. So it was so nice to see it from the water.
Thanks.
Anyway, that video that you did where you had George Benson's music playing, was that done with a drone?
Yes. Yep. That was, yeah, we have a little drone. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah.
That was great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually, I think the whole segment is on our YouTube channel. If you're interested in seeing the entire, I think it's about an hour. We cover the whole trip down from the Great Lakes right out to Lewisporte. So
Awesome. I'll have to check that out.
Gone Sailing. If you search on YouTube for Gone Sailing CA, you'll find our videos there. And yeah, please do watch.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next person is Seamus. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted. Mike, I really enjoyed your show, and I found it fascinating. And you can tell by my accent, I'm from Ireland, and some of the scenery in Newfoundland reminded me of various points on the west coast of Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And what I wanted to ask you was, I was interested in your binoculars. What make are they, and how is the precision on them for viewing?
We have, I think they're called Steiner Ocean something. They have a compass.
I saw that, yeah.
It's an analog compass with a light, and they're very big and bright, and it's autofocus. There is no focus on them. So yeah, they're great, really nice.
Where can you purchase those in the Toronto region?
I think we got them at West Marine, which is now gone. It used to be down at Harbourfront, but yeah, I'd really recommend. They're a bit heavy, but they're an excellent pair of glasses. And I just wanted to say that you're from Ireland, and that's where we're next season, 2022. We're sailing from Horta, where our boat is in the Azores, and we're going up to Ireland. That's our plan.
But I advise you to bring your masks and make sure you just pull into sort of harbors where there's a pub near the harbor, you know.
That definitely we're going to do that. Yeah, take our violins and you know, fiddles and everything, and yeah.
You won't be without company. One
Oh,
other
no.
thing was when you were hauling yourself up the mast when you had that problem to deal with, did you have footrests or did you just work your way up the mast?
No, I just wear a climbing harness, and we have electric primary winches. Jayne hoisted me up. So.
And one last thing, your reference to the trawlers, don't tie up to the trawlers. I'm 72 now, but in my last year of high school, I spent a month. I just volunteered to work on a trawler. We used to go to a seaside place, my family did, on the Irish Sea, just north of Dublin, called Skerries.
Oh.
And I used to get up at 4 in the morning, and I had to be down at the harbor at 4:30. And I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of hard work. The only thing that bothered me was the fumes from the diesel oil pulling out in the morning. But these guys taught me how to operate a trawler and how to trawl, and also how to jig and work with the nets. And my part of the deal was for my fishing education, and also they let me operate the trawler for a while, and except when they were bringing it into the harbor. And the deal was I cooked them breakfast every morning.
Excellent. That's the way to learn to handle a boat. Yeah, the fishing, they're superb boat handlers. I love to watch them come into the docks.
And not one of those lads could swim. And I
No.
forgot about that memory. That was like nearly 60 years ago.
No, Newfoundlanders don't swim either. By and large, nobody can swim. The water's too cold.
But we all went afterwards for a pint, you know.
They like beer too. Yes, we've discovered that as well.
Thank you again.
Thank
Okay,
you.
next person, Julia, go ahead, unmute yourself.
I enjoyed your session a lot. Thank you very much, Mike, and your lovely partner.
Thank you. Thank you, Julia.
I need a seafarer's dictionary, I think. I don't know what a waypoint is.
Oh, waypoint. Yeah, just when you know, we're working on chart work, just point to point. I just call them a waypoint. You know, as you, particularly working with a laptop or digital electronics, you know, as you enter a position that you want to then sail to, we just call it a waypoint. Yeah.
So the whole line is the waypoint.
The point itself, yeah, the line is made up of waypoints. So each point is a waypoint on the course, I guess. Yeah.
And excuse my ignorance, I sew all the time, but do you have a sewing machine on board? Is it battery operated or one of the old hand cranking ones?
We do.
Or do you have a solar powered one?
We do have a lot of battery, DC battery power that we can invert and plug things into. But no, we have a sewing machine, a Sailrite, and it has a hand crank, a great big counterweight on it, and Jayne can use it without power, or we can plug it in also. So yeah, it's a nice machine. It's for sail making.
How wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Noel, go ahead, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, I guess I'm unmuted. Thanks for that, Mike. It brought back memories of Newfoundland, that South Coast and East Coast. If you're going to Ireland, we had the boat there for 5 years, I guess. If you want to email me, I can give you some of the spots that we were at and give you some contact information, especially at the New Ross Boatyard.
Oh, that'd be great.
Would be the place to leave the boat if you're going to leave it anywhere there.
Oh, great.
Sorry,
our contact information is here. I don't know your email address, but if you email me, I can email you back, and we could get in touch. That'd be great.
Yep. Okay, we'll try that if I can find it.
No, I can organize that too.
Okay, thanks, Diane.
Okay.
Okay, next person is Tatis. Go ahead, unmute yourself.
You mentioned that you went to the Azores and that you were, you had difficulty with your steering, oh God, on the way around Newfoundland. Did you end up getting a wind vane?
We do, yes, we did. We installed, we bought a hydro vane. And we ordered it last year actually, and we just installed it this spring, and we sailed across the Atlantic with the hydro vane.
They're terrific.
And it's great. It's fantastic. You just can't beat it. It was a little bit expensive, but yeah. And we fixed the other. We have an electric too, and we've since got a new motor and a new controller and all that junk for it. So it's okay. But the hydro vane is just fantastic. Yeah, can't say enough good things about it for long distance sailing. It's the way to go.
Thank you.
Okay, before I turn it back out to Diane, is there anybody else who wants to raise their hand and has a comment or question? Okay, if not, I'll turn it back to Diane.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike. That just makes me want to go back to Newfoundland. I too have not sailed around Newfoundland. I've only been on the land, but it just is a place that somehow pulls you. And you brought up all those yearnings, if you will. I love the names like Pudding Cove and Tickle and that kind of thing. They're really unusual. I also wanted you to know that I will put all those connections up on my next missive to everybody. So next Tuesday, everybody will get all those links that if you didn't manage to get them down today, he did put them into the chat, so you could write them down. I've copied them and we'll have them in the next missive. So if any of you wish to see some of their other adventures, you'd be able to go ahead and do that.